Thank you, AI. So good afternoon, colleagues. It's good to be with you today. And we are looking forward to a wonderful conversation and engagement with Sara's presentation today. So her lecture is going to explore Nowruz as a theological framework for Persian Christian identity and covenant renewal. This is rooted in themes of rebirth, reconciliation, and cosmic balance, and it provides a meaningful bridge between Persian cultural heritage and Christian theology. So here at OCMS, I think, and elsewhere, Sara needs no introduction, but I will introduce her because I know that there's a few people that might want to benefit from knowing who Sara is. So originally, Sara is from Iran. She's Sara Afshari. She's a research tutor here at Oxford Center for Mission Studies, and she's also currently the Admissions Tutor. She received a PhD from Edinburgh University in Media, Religion, and Culture. She's the co-founder and former executive director of SAT 7 Parts, which is a Christian television channel in Farsi or Persian language. She had Master's in Theology in World Christianity from Edinburgh and a Master's in Art in Media Communication from World University. And she's written a book titled Religion, Media, and Conversion in Iran, Mediated Christianity in an Islamic Context. So Sara is thorough in her presentations and engagement with theology, and we are going to have a wonderful time. I think she's going to excite all of us. And thank you, Sara, for stepping in when we, this day we were not going to have something. Sara didn't step in at short notice. So we are grateful for that. So please inspire us and motivate us.
Thank you. Paul, did you have a question?
Was there a question?
You raised your hand.
No, sorry, hit a button.
Okay, hello everyone. Thank you so much for coming. Especially Nowruz is just around the corner, and Nowruz will start celebration of Nowruz from Thursday and 9 a.m. in UK time. And that is why I felt it is very, especially in OCMS, being a very global, and it's a good idea to present something in relation to Nowruz. And knowing that I'm Iranian, knowing that Nowruz is celebrated not only by Iran, but Afghanistan and the Stan countries in Central Asia and many other people. And that is why we are doing that. Therefore, let me, the outline of my lectures as follow. My lecture will have, actually this is a draft of an article. I am just testing what I am proposing because I think that is the first time to discuss Nowruz as a theological framework in Christianity. That's why I need feedback. And therefore, my article is divided in 3 sections. The section 1 is a kind of introduction to Nowruz itself and the methodology I'm going to use. And the second section is about interconnection between the 3 worlds which Nowruz created that space. And the third is theological framework. But before that, in the theological framework, suggesting mainly looking at this human condition, relation to life, death, and rebirth and salvation, as well as resurrection and covenantal renewal. That will be very brief today. Before that, I'd like to tell you my aim, the aim of this article. Actually, the aim of this article to start conversation, to start further studies, conversation, and theological development, and especially a conversation that also brings churches within the regions that they celebrate Nowruz, and see whether they can use Nowruz, this celebration, as a framework that brings the churches together and discuss or collaborate together And the other, the other suggestion is to see how we can use Nowruz, especially as a framework for doing theology for Iranian converts, and especially in identity development, theological and identity development among converts in Iran. My aim is actually in this lecture is to argue that Nowruz has this ability to be contextualized and adopt into using it as a framework for theology. And again, another thing I need to add here, I'm not the first person, or Christians are not the first person to use Nowruz as a theological framework. And we see that among the Zoroastrians, Nowruz predates Zoroastrians, and Zoroastrians developed an amazing theology for it. That is why everyone thinks that is a Zoroastrian event, which is not, and including also Islam. Islam also, especially Shia Islam, developed a theological framework out of Nowruz, and later on I will tell you more about that. So we Christians are not the first to really do such attempt, but I think, the first one to attempt such the theological things. Before that, I'm going to show you a video, and because this video will show the theological framework that Islamic Muslim, especially Shia Muslim, has developed. And this also video shows you lots of the concepts that I am going to address. So I'm going to stop sharing. Can you start sharing, please? Yeah. No, yes, that one.
Okay. Here we go.
Sara, those of us online aren't getting any sound?
What you have noticed in, sorry, I just need to sort this one out first. Yeah, I think that. You have noticed a very contrast actually the beginning was the prayer for the Nowruz. Normally, it's on Iranian television, starts just few minutes before Nowruz, and immediately starts the celebration of Nowruz. Interestingly, I took that clip from an Islamic television station in Iran, kind of international. That is why it did have an Urdu translation and English translation, because it is. And then after that, immediately into Nowruz. And then the Nowruz music, you heard the 20 seconds, is also with horn. This, what is this archangel blowing the horn? And it is trumpet. And yes, and so I will go through these things, then you will see some of those elements of lamentation, of mourning, and then come into the life celebration of the life in my. So let's just look at a little bit about Nowruz. As I mentioned, Nowruz is pre-Zoroastrian traditions and celebrated on the spring equinox. Nowruz, the meaning of Nowruz, the new day. The reason it is the new day, the moment of that Nowruz is very sacred. The previous pre-Zoroastrians theology of that was because in that day God created the universe. Based on Zoroastrians and Islam later adopted the new day, the reason because God created humans in that new day. And the second significance of that day is that day God created a new covenant with humans. It is, and there is also a verse in the Quran talks about God asked whether I am your Lord, and the people says yes you are, and says okay, therefore do not tell me that I didn't tell you about that. In the day of judgment you will be judged based on that. That is the covenant and the day of covenant. That again I will address that later. However, now let's just let's go to the based on Omar Khayyam. Omar Khayyam, I think is in the 11th century. He, in his book Nowruz Nameh, claiming that Nowruz was established by Q-Marata or Q-Mars, modern name, the first ruler of Iran, and also the first Adam, also called Q-Mars. He divided the year into 12 months. And those 12 months are named after 12 angels. 4 of those angels permanently reside in heaven, and 4 on earth, and another 4 in between. The job of these 12 angels is to protect heaven and earth and in between from evils and darkness. However, most of the scholars also, they link the Nowruz, we have it nowadays, is to Jamshid. Though again, after Jamshid, Nowruz was stopped by Zahak and restarted by Afredun. We have lots of legends and myths. Those names or those things I'm telling you, they are very much part of the legends. We do not have really any dates for any of those things. The theology of the Nowruz, as I mentioned, is very much part of that. Let me just, one of the Muslim scholars called Mir Damad, he's also a clergy, he wrote very extensive article on the history of Christianity in Iran. And in his article, he claims that those 3 magi who brought the news to, who went to Jesus, followed the star and at Jesus' birth, they heard and they read about the coming of Christ through Zoroastrians and pre-Zoroastrians books rather than through Judaism. And one of the books he mentioned is Gashtas Nameh or Jam'as Nameh, which was written for the king Gashtas. And at the end of that book, predict that Sociant is coming. Sociant meaning the Messiah is coming, and the Sociant, the birth of that, the Sociant is marked by a star, by a special star. And therefore those Magi, they kept watching the sky to see when that star would appear, and when the star appeared, they followed the star and that. And therefore what Mir Damad here is trying to say is not really from the historical point. The significant what he's talking is he suggests that Iranian worldview is not a stranger to Christian ideology and Christian theology. That the foundation of Christian theology can easily be also read and translated within Iranian context and within Iranian culture. And that is also my argument that Nowruz stands out as a powerful theological and philosophical framework that can shape distinctly Farsi Christian theology and identity. Not only that, that can also bring unity and collaboration between the churches and Christians in the region where they celebrate Nowruz. A part of Nowruz is lots of symbolism and rituals. We have pre-preparation for Nowruz, and then the New Year celebration itself. And rituals and symbols functions as powerful tool for shaping and reinforcing communal identity. And these rituals also provide a structured way for individuals to engage in collective experiences. As I mentioned, we have pre-rituals and post-rituals. One of the pre-rituals is Khane Takani, house cleaning. All of the rituals, they have physical appearance and spiritual appearance. In Nowruz, you cannot separate physical and spiritual nature and the world of humanity from each other. The physical, while you are doing Khane Takani, cleaning the house, that is also you need to reflect on your past for the purification of your heart. And the other thing is also Charshambe Suri, which is actually this evening. Charshambe Suri, sometimes they think it is a fire worship, but in reality it's not. The fire that is significant of the purification. As you saw in that clip, people are lamenting or crying or praying. Is a lamentation for one's sin and loss, and also desiring for a better life, as you heard it at the end of that prayer, give us a better state in this year. And fire is also represent of divine, the representation of divine and representation of God. And we see that in the Old Testament when God appeared to Moses on the fire, a fire in the bush. Therefore, this fire is representing of that. Then the other thing is normally before the starting of the Nowruz, many people, they go and visit the dead. That is not only remembering those one who died, but also remembering one's own death, that this world is temporary, and that also lamenting their own sins and their own losses as well. And I remember one New Year, my mother went to the cemetery and she was too late to come home, and I was so angry with her why she did that. So therefore, the renewal of human life and cosmic balance in the Nowruz mirror the resurrection and divine harmony. And after Nowruz, then we have other rituals. One of the rituals is Hafsin table. The Hafsin table serves as symbolic between the nature and human lives, and also the grace from God. Grace from God, and the Hafsin table in each culture is different. For example, in Iranians, they have different elements on their table. Afghans, they have different elements on their table. Sin in I have seen is also taken from a word from the Old Persian, meaning purification and longing. And therefore, and then, for example, the Kurdish, they have a different, again, on their have seen, for example, Afghanistan, they do have 7 nuts, and Kurdish people, I think they have 7 fruits. Depending on your culture, have seen would really shows that. And the other part of the rituals is Dido Bazdid. This one, Dido Bazdid, is actually, it is the time of reconciliation and the renewal of relationship. Sizda Bedar is the 13th day of Nowruz. Because of the this modern understanding of 13, they called it perhaps it's the curse, but in the past Iran, Sizda was, or the 13th, Sizda Bedar was a blessed day to let go of one's burden and asking for God's blessing and fortune. And that is why they throw their sabzi into the river as it is. Therefore, all these rituals, they do have connotations in that sense. And now let's just go to the methodology I'm going to use, because sometimes people, they are a little bit scared. Therefore, am I going to use a syncretis element in adopting Nowruz? But in reality, I'm not presenting a syncretization of this contextual theology, nor am I suggesting translation. I am suggesting a transcendental model of using this framework. And why do I suggest this transcendental model or transcendental method to do this theological framework? Because transcendental method helps us to explore the necessary condition of human knowledge and experience, and transcendental method also helps us to investigate the conditions of a possibility of divine revelation and human receptivity. Therefore, Nowruz provides that condition and that possibility of divine revelation for for human receptivity of those divine relationship things. Especially a transcendental method helps us to understand how theology emerged from within human experience, rather than being externally developed and externally and exposed onto the congregation and the people. And then transcendental, when we combine transcendental methods with Nowruz as a framework in doing contextual theology, it allows us to ask ourselves, what are the necessary conditions that make Nowruz meaningful, and how does Nowruz reveal deeper theological truth that align with Christian salvation history? And how can Iranian Christian converts see Nowruz as not only as a cultural relic, but as a theological bridge to Christian faith and identity? At the heart of that framework is the understanding that humanity and nature mirror each other in the presence of the divine. And that is what I love about that, because it brings the wholeness into our theology. The wholeness including the divine, the nature, the environment, and the human lives all together, as it is also concerned within the Bible itself. So section 2, the section 2, one of the things which again, at the end of this methodology, I mentioned all three words come to, it is interconnected, all the three words there. So my second section is based on interconnections between these three words, the word of nature in relation to creation, and the word of humanity in relation to life, death, rebirth, resurrection, and the word of divine in relation to God's presence, salvation, and covenant. And the reconciliation, of course, comes into the word of human. The first things is the word of nature. Part of the creation and renewal in Nowruz, especially the first day, is where the harmony and balance is very much in control and in order, where God, we see the divine, the desire for the kingdom of God, where everything is in balance. The cosmic balance, we can see this cosmic balance also within the Genesis describes creation as an order and harmonious process. Nowruz symbolizes the beginning of a new year and life's rebirth in harmony with renewal of nature. One of the, as I mentioned, one of the things which brings the world of humans and the world of nature together is the half-sin table. And the half-sin table also it connects that if, in fact, tells us, if the nature tells us, if you protect me, I will also provide for you. And it is a kind of reciprocal relationship between the nature and the human, and that plays the symbolic in the half-sin table. That symbolic plays that. However, if we wanted, I'm not going to tell you about this what are the elements, because each of the elements on the half-sin table, they represent something from the nature to human's life in relation to growth, blessings, and rebirth and fertility. But again, I'm not going to look into the details of that because we do not have time. Even in my article, I will not go to look into depth of those meanings, but because that is why I encourage engagement for further studies, to do all that kind of things, to go through all that elements and understand them from the Christian perspective. However, if we look at the renewal of creation within our Bible, we see that in Genesis 1, describing creation as an order and harmonious process, and also encouraging human stewardship over the nature. And in Romans 1:20, also Paul highlights the natural world as a testimony to God's eternal power and divinity. And Nowruz emphasizes on this new light. That is why we translate that as a new day, which is aligned with Christian celebration of order and goodness. So the other things is related to a theological understanding and application of that creation and the nature is, again, one of the things which always amazed me, how little the Bible deals with the nature. And in Genesis, in few verses, quickly tells us that God created this and created that and created that, and it was good, and quickly moved to human's narrative. Therefore, the biblical creation is often viewed not only merely as a historical event, but also as a foundation for God's power and covenantal relationship with humanity. And this perspective suggests that creation itself is actually ordained towards a future fulfillment in reordering and restoring that echoes the cyclical renewal of a celebration that we do it in Nowruz. So if we say there is not much really the story of the creation in the Bible, but the story of constant renewal of the covenant, the constant God's emphasizing and this narrative of redemption. And that is sometimes we do it that every year through Nowruz, reminding us of this new covenant, of this new renewal in that. And that salvation is not an isolated event, but an ongoing process that involves reordering of the world. And the reordering of the world is a journey. A journey needs to remind us every single moment and every year. Just as Nowruz reorders time and existence by making a new beginning at the vernal equinox, the biblical concept of salvation initial a continual renewal of creation and humanity's place within it. This ongoing transformation reflects the dynamic relationship between creator and creation. This ongoing transformation reflects the dynamic relationship between not only creator and creation, but also human and nature, emphasizing themes of restoration, harmony, and the ultimate fulfillment of God's redemptive purpose. So now let's just move to the world of humans. The world of human, again, I like to link that again with that very gloomy, dark video I show you at the early, life, death, and rebirth. We cannot truly celebrate life if we really do not acknowledge death. We cannot understand light if we do not understand, acknowledge darkness. And that is why the lamentation is very important part of moving to New Year. It is not really contradicted. One of the things, again, I noticed within the scholarship of the West, understanding our literature and philosophy, they think Zoroastrians are dual thinking. But in reality, it's not dual thinking because they are actually together. Life and death are together. Light and darkness are together. Lamentation and celebration are together because you can't really celebrate if you don't lament, if you don't repent. They are very much part of each other and they cannot exist one without another. And that is actually where the preparation for Nowruz comes into play, and the importance of the preparation for Nowruz come into play in that. The human condition is one of the continual transformation, where individuals and societies seek renewal, reconciliation, and healing from past burdens. This existential longing is reflected in Nowruz through deeply symbolic rituals and embodied purification, renewal, and transition from the old to new. And one of those rituals is, as I mentioned, Khane Takani, and the other one, as I mentioned, is Charshambe Suri, fire jumping, and the other one, as I mentioned, is visiting those who died, remembering those who died, and also Dido Bazdid, visiting each other. The Dido Bazdid meaning visiting each other, but it's not only the visiting, it's renewing your relationship and also reconciling with one another. In most of the reconciliation in Iran happens during Nowruz, because if you have a problem with someone, you need to go and sort it out. And that is why, again, it is a biblical thing, and Christ told us you can't go and take the communion if you haven't really sorted out your burden or what do you call that, with your neighbor or your brother. You need to leave that and then go and reconcile with your brother, your sisters, your family, your friends before coming. And that is also Nowruz. You have to go through that kind of reconciliation processes. That I personally witnessed lots of those reconciliation processes. Those maybe after Nowruz, they will fall apart again, but that is the rituals normally people, they feel they have to go through that. Therefore, the bridge, and the other thing is the Sizabadar again, as I mentioned, is the symbolic of you are willing to let go and for a rebirth, for a new life, let go of the past and rebirth. And at the end of, interestingly, at the heart of all that kind of rituals is the understanding of togetherness. So I think I need to, so in that sense, if we are going to back to look at the transcendental method, we see that the human condition requires renewal, and Nowruz provides that condition, provides that space and that place for that kind of renewal. And the human condition is also requires constant repentance, a process of transformation. The part of transformation is a process of repentance. And then this also very much linked to another Iranian legend, Siavash, which I will not really go through that maybe later on, I just mentioned it briefly. And the other, again, the human condition of this going through the redemption transformation is understanding of reconciliation, not only with one another, but also with God and oneself. That using of transcendental model will help us to understand those while using Nowruz as a framework and as a space for developing a theology. And then let's just quickly talk about the word of divine. That's the word of, as I mentioned, the significance of Nowruz extends beyond renewal of nature, personal and communal renewal, to reflect deeper reality of divine presence and divine grace and divine unity and divine and God's desire for reconciliation and God's desire for renewing covenant or restoring the covenant. In many spiritual traditions, including Christianity, transformation of the natural world is seen as an outward sign of greater divine renewal that is constantly at work within creation and humanity. Just as Nowruz marks cyclical birth of nature, it also symbolizes the renewal of human heart and the restoration of divine order. This idea resonates deeply with Christian theology, which teaches that renewal is ultimately a divine art, and it is a divine act. God's is at work, and God's work of redemption, transformation, and the covenantal renewal. As I again mentioned the prayer, the Islamic prayer earlier, I show you. And interestingly, if sometimes I say to myself, if we Christians wanted to replace that prayer, what that would be? One of those verses could be Psalms 51:10, create in me a clean heart, O God, and renew a light spirit within me. And this could be a Christian prayer before Nowruz for us Christian. And this divine transformation, we can also see a more biblical example in 2 Corinthians 3:18, where it talks about, and we all who with unveiling forces contemplate the Lord's glory are being transformed into his image with ever increasing glory. The transformation, therefore, we see in Nowruz is merely it's a mirror that Christian belief in the spiritual metaphysical world, and bringing the world of nature, the physical world, and into the spiritual world in God's presence. We together mirroring in God's presence. What am I doing with time? Oh gosh, I think I'm running out of time. That was my first section. The third section is actually a kind of experimental. What I'm doing, it's experimental, trying to see how this theological framework would work. And I look at four topics, four issues. Nowruz, I will go through them very quickly. Nowruz as human condition, as I mentioned in the word of human, life, death, and rebirth. Salvation as existential condition of transformation. At the heart of salvation is the quest for hope. And this quest for hope, and even is very much, actually is very much at play in lamentation than in celebration. Nowruz offers this contextual framework based on lived experience for understanding this salvation. Salvation from sin to grace. I'm just trying to see what should I cut off and what should I include in my talk. Nowruz and spiritual renewal, as I mentioned earlier, it invites us to participate in acts of renewal. That is one of the things which I say in transcendental model allows us to bring the experience of participatory participants in God's act into understanding the theology of the Bible. And it is therefore, it is a journey of renewal, which we also see it in in the Bible and in our theology. One of the extremely important themes in Nowruz is Nowruz and theme of resurrection. Before Zoroastrianism, I read in an article that one of the names they used for Nowruz was the Festival of Resurrection. It's not only the festival of it is that because it is very much linked to Iranian legend of Siavash, and even before that, and also it brings into the resurrection not only the resurrection of death, it's rebirth, resurrection, and hope, eschatological hope, and also provides rooms. Again, lamentation is very important. That's why I'm constantly mentioning that. It's also brings into when we bring the story of Siavash, still part of Iran. Sometimes still they continue celebrating the story of Siavash, especially among the Kurds and top north and northwest in Iran. They do sometimes, and the Siavash is one of the legends who were unjustly accused, and then he had to go through the fire of repentance, and he came out unharmed. And later on, he died, and he is known as a living martyr. And therefore, also within Nowruz, the concept of living martyrs linked to the understanding of resurrection. And then Islam, interestingly, Islam adopted that understanding of this theology, especially Shia Islam, in Shia and in Ashura and Tasu'a, in Imam Hussein's death and his battle and his death. It influences that, the passion of Ashura and the passion of Siavash. That is, again, another really interesting study, maybe with very interesting benefit some of our theological elements within that region. The other very important also elements, theological elements, within Nowruz is covenantal renewal. Covenantal renewal is not only between God renewing the covenant, as Islam talks about in the Quran. You renew the covenant with God, and also it is you renew the covenant with yourself, and you renew the covenant with the society, and you renew the covenant with the nature. You promise that you protect the nature, and you promise together you will create a harmony within the society. That is why the reconciliation is happening during this Nowruz. Then again, I'm going to quickly go back. And therefore, in conclusion, Nowruz, I suggest that provides a theological bridge between the Persian identity or Iranian identity. I don't like the word Persian sometimes. Iranian identity and Christian faith. Christian theology and Nowruz share foundational themes of renewal, resurrection, and covenant restoration. And I think the transcendental model will help us not to compromise Bible nor to compromise Nowruz, to allow them to connect to each other. Nowruz to provide condition and the Bible to provide our theological framework. So thank you so much for your attention, and I love to receive your questions and comments.
Wow, thank you, Sara. What profound and enriching insights that Nowruz is that you've given us. And also just to think of Nowruz, as you were speaking, I was thinking to myself that it gives opportunity for human beings to be better versions of themselves. And also that when you talked about one of the priests cleaning the house, it kind of reminded me, made me reflect on my own culture and think about when a person is doing bad or evil things, and in my culture, they say his house is really dirty, he must be living in a dirty, he or she is living in a very dirty house. And so again, it makes me think of the possibility that can be lived for gender justice, for racial justice, and so many other things, because it's focus on harmony, on divine transformation and restoration, all those that. But now, colleagues, friends, this is an opportunity for you to ask questions and make comments and reflect with Sara on Nowruz. I welcome those of you online. You could just raise your hand. I see we have got a very big gathering online. Thank you for joining us. You can just raise your hand if you have a question. And colleagues in the room, you also can raise your hand and just give your comments and give your suggestions and so on and so forth. So the ball is in our court. Who's going to start off? Who's going to start us off? Yes, please, David.
Oh, Sara, thank you. Thank you very much. And as you were talking, I was thinking of the Eucharist. If you've got serious about cause of this, in this celebration, it certainly is something that new converts from Shia background are thinking about, and fresh ways of thinking about the Eucharist using Iranian ideas are coming to light already. And so this is just a question to you, if you think there is any promise in thinking about Nowruz as a celebration of the remembrance of somebody. In this case, obviously, in our case, in the Christian case, the remembrance of Christ's death and resurrection. I know the month of Muharram in Islam, this has some similarities with Nowruz, although the two are quite different in the sense that Muharram is based on lunar calendar, it's probably solar calendar. But Muharram is also the first month of the year for Muslims more widely, and one of the four most sacred months in Islam. And among the Shia, this is a very important month because it remembers Hussein, his sacrifice, his martyrdom in Karbala. So there are interconnections between some of these ideas. Nowruz, what precedes Nowruz also is pretty discordant, as you have described so well. There is depth, there is lack of reconciliation, there is pain, all of that is transformed when one enters into this new day. There is new life, there is reconciliation. So in that sense, it reminds me of the Eucharist, and I think there is great promise in detailing what might be some of the continuities between the two.
Actually, I have in my article, I have mentioned Eucharist under the concept of resurrection and rebirth, but I didn't bring it. I should have put it part of my presentation. I agree with you. And then in regard to Imam Hussein's Ashura and Tasua, I'm not talking about the date, but to, the passion itself. The rituals or the theology of the passion is very much mirror Siavash. And yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
I think there's some questions in
Yeah,
the
there
chat.
is. I was going to read them. Okay, so there's sorry, where was that? Okay, so Jeremy is asking, well, there's a thanks from Nick and then Jeremy further asked, do you think, I can't read that, Seduce the poet knew of Jewish or Christian beliefs about animal sacrifice, I think, yeah.
Do you think, okay, sorry.
Go down.
Do you think
Ferdowsi.
yes, the poet knew the Jewish or Christian beliefs about animal sacrifice?
He might, because Judaism being part of Iran very long, even before Christianity. But again, the animal sacrifice is not really a Jewish thing. It's a Middle Eastern thing. And it is within all Middle Eastern religions, before even Judaism, in Zoroastrianism and all this, there is this element of sacrifice. Did I answer you, Jeremy? Do you want to explain or comment?
Maybe before he explains, from the top, he talks about in the Nowruz legend, Kaveh kills a sheep to save a youth from Zahak's snake. And then
yes, the things I mentioned about Feridun, because Zahak overthrown Jamshid, and Jamshid ruled over 700 years. And he was corrupted, and Zahak overthrown him, and he was not a good person. And then he stopped Nowruz, and then Kaveh, he had 14 sons, and this Zahak had 2. Anyway, it's a long story, legend. And all his 14 sons were killed, and that is why he went against. And then later on, Afredun or Feridun came in his place, and Afredun or Feridun is one of the sons of Jamshid who brought back again Nowruz celebration.
But I think Jeremy unmuted. I think he wanted to clarify something or to say something. Jeremy, go ahead and unmute and then say what you wanted to say.
Laura is
okay. No, it's you are cutting.
So the way that Nolan Kurdish
No, we won't be able to hear you. We'll give you an opportunity
Okay.
later, maybe when the connection is
I
okay. But
apologize
right
for
now we
stopping
cannot.
too late.
You are cutting.
Okay.
I think it's further. Okay, so Laura is asking, could Christian interpretation or way of celebrating Nowruz help non-Christians to understand the reconciliation that Jesus offers?
Thank you, Laura. One of the things which I mentioned in the slides on the rituals and symbolism is repetition of the rituals and the practice. Every year that practice is happening. And therefore it becomes part of DNA in this Iranian or those who celebrate Nowruz, their DNA. And they constantly that. And you can use it as an example of that kind of reconciliation. But because from the ritualistic point of view, they haven't been part of that practice, I don't know whether it would work, but it could be used as an example. And we have also Robert Assyrian and Amir Bazri was there. I think he had to go somewhere. And if Robert, if you want to add anything or make a comment or correction, please do.
No, it's wonderful. A lot of insights. I really enjoy the lecture. I just have a question. In the part of the methodology, you use the theologians like Karl Rahner and Karl Barth, that they are arguing about receptivity of human culture and spirit for the divine revelation. My question is that maybe I'm wrong, but in Karl Barth theology, he's very critical about natural theology and what God can reveal in nature, at least in the first phase of his theology, dialectical theology, and after Romans, Epistle to the Romans, he was so critical against especially natural theology and what was in the German theology about that. So my question is how we can using in transcendental model Karl Barth theology to justify that approach to Nowruz. It was a little bit ambiguous for me.
Yes, no, I'm not using Karl Barth theology. I'm adopting the transcendental model as a method doing theology rather than using it as a theology. And this because and then another things, if by natural theology, meaning nature, I'm trying to bring these three words together, the word of divine and the word of human and the word of nature. And instead of only looking at concentrating, it is how that they mirror each other, or how what is happening within the physical world can remind us of who we are and who we're supposed to become in God's covenant, in God's redemption plan. And that is, I'm not doing the theology of Karl Barth, but I'm just using a method. Actually, even that method, I'm developing it in such a way that would work for that, not only copying and pasting.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay. I think it's an excellent lecture about contextual theology in Iranian culture. I think it's excellent. Thank you, Sara.
Can I just add on what Robert has raised on the methodology as well? I was also thinking, if you look at Stephen Bevan, that's one of the models that you have taken there. But he has translation, transcendental, then he has synthetic, and then he has what he calls countercultural in that. I'm wondering to what extent can transcendental mode, which focuses so much on the process of doing theology, help you to engage Nowruz concept more effectively? Don't you think you probably need I understand you are treading in a very, very careful way so that you don't fall into what could be conceived as syncretism. So you are trying to tread in a very careful way. But don't you think maybe synthetic, if you follow Stephen Bevan, would be much more appropriate because it helps you to engage and interact with the idea, or intercultural may help you because you are arguing that this model actually can help to create this bridge that you are looking for. I'm feeling that your methodology is not helping you to analyze the concept, which you've done very brilliant job, but it's not done with a very engaging theorizing the methodology itself in the process, because it's not just designed for what you are saying, designed for the process, but you have gone beyond the process. Where you are producing the product itself, which the model, if you follow people like Bass, Renner, or even where it came from, what's the name, Immanuel Kant, where this model is coming from, it's not designed or exact for what you've done.
No, it's not.
Exactly. So then why don't you look for a model that you can delimit yourself, but you are developing something that will come in terms of appropriate. I'm not sure.
No, I know what you mean. The reason I was attracted, I did read this Stephen Bevan's book, and the reason I become attracted to transcendental model is not, it allows me to tweak it,
exactly,
to create a new something, not only to adopt that. And the other things, I use a transcendental model to allow more engagement and conversation later on, and even later on, maybe, for example, Robert comes, says, no, I wanted to use that methodology doing this theology. He says, okay, go ahead. But I wanted something to invite people to engage. And to that, I felt transcendental model allows that framework to, I don't use it as a framework, I use it as a tool to create a framework.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But remember that you are drifting into anthropology. The moment you are dealing with knowledge, you are dealing with the anthropological concept. So, which means what you have said, much of it, you'll find, what's the name of this guy? It's David, who has written so much about this sociologist, anthropologist, I can't remember the name. Very, very common name. Anyway, when I remember, I'll tell you. So when you start drifting into anthropological context, you need a tool that will help you to deal with that. A transcendental model is coming from philosophy, can only help you deal philosophically. But your work is already at a very anthropological context, where it is bringing lamentations, it is bringing the very ritual of crime. It actually deals with the context of ritual. You are dealing with the context of the ritual into this. And
I'm not dealing with the context. I'm using the rituals and symbolism as a condition, as a condition where this theology can be developed. You know, that is why it's sadly that is only an article.
Yeah.
And it is, and it's already, I haven't done much, but still it's already is the size of an article.
I think go to Steve Bevan and read context, models of contextual theology. What you have raised, that's one of them.
Yeah.
It will help you to figure out. One of the other guys who has done a very good job about methodology, responding to Stephen Bevan, is Mika, in a very small book where he critiques all these models of contextual theology that are raised, and then shows how weak they could be when we are dealing with certain things, and how we can.
And that is why I always try to ability to tweak them, because all of them, they have advantage and disadvantage. And then what? Is there any other questions or comments? Please do give me comments.
Sorry, I'm touching something else. Yeah, are there any other comments and questions and suggestions? Yeah, seems like.
May I just ask a very practical question about publication? So it looks like it's already, you've already got the first full draft. have you thought of publisher potentially?
Oh, I have a publisher.
Oh, you already have
It's the Mission Study Journal.
of IAMS?
Mission Study Journal, BRIL.
Well, yeah,
Yes.
International Association.
Yes,
Commission.
yeah, Internet Association.
Okay,
Yes.
good. So, yeah, Steve Evans is appropriate,
Especially if you are
because he's
drifting
part of
into-
that network.
Yeah.
Well done.
You probably need to strengthen the mythological dimension of your methodology in that channel.
He's very well known in that circle.
Okay, yes.
Yeah.
I will look at that again.
And Mika,
And Mika.
because both of them have been editors of that channel, and your paper may likely as well go to them for review.
Oh, okay.
Okay, and so Jeremy says again, he's written a paper on contextualization of Nowruz, which covers some similar areas and some different.
Notice, Jeremy, is that the one you sent it to me the other day?
Yes, it's there.
Yes, if that is the same one, I'm sorry, I haven't been able to respond to your email.
Thank you, Dr. Sara, for your very illuminating lecture. You know so much more about some Persian customs and traditions and Zoroastrianism than I do. But if anyone wants to read my article, I've linked it in the chat.
Thank you.
Thank you,
I
Jeremy.
will do that, yes.
And thank you, Amelita. Thank you, everyone, for the comments. And
So if there is no any questions, we can just close them.
yeah. So thank you for this afternoon. Thank you for joining us. It was such a wonderful team that was online. We had a group, we had a big group, and we are thankful for you. Please come next week. We have another MBL lecture. This one focuses on the Nicene Creed and womanism. So I hope all of you can come and invite others to come too.
It's also contextual from India.
Yeah, it's from India, yes, Nagaland, and we will be looking forward to seeing all of you. Thank you, colleagues.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you.
Have a good
Thank you, Sarah.
Is it recorded?
Yeah.
All recordings will be deleted in 2 weeks, so you should know that.
Yeah.
Yeah, me too.
So,
But in
stop
terms of
recording.
multiple connections
Where's
with
the-
YouTube,
Yes,
it's not very
exactly.
serious.